Okay, so hi guys, and welcome to our review of being able to speak about the past. So remember being able to say what actions or what activities did we do in the past? Ask questions like how was your evening? How was your night? And also able to talk about ancient objects. So things that are from the past. Maybe they are inventions, they are things that people created. We know how to speak about them. So let's get into the review. Remember that it is the past simple tense, the verb tense, that is so important. So you know that we looked at Carla Frido, okay? Sorry, Frida Kahlo. And we know that we need to use the verb to be when we need to say where someone was from, where they were born, okay, because these are actions that are already finished. So you could see Frida Kahlo was, so that comes from the verb to be because she was from Mexico and she was a painter. So I've used the verb to be to tell you which country she was from and what was her job. What did she do for a living? And we know because we saw her, now we're going to go to the present because it's still now. So she is, that's why I said is, because this is a current action. She is on the 500 Mexican pesos note. Okay, the currency for Mexico, she's on that 500 Mexican pesos note. Okay, the next one, we talked about George Washington. Okay, so remember George Washington, because not now, but in the past, he was, okay, was the first president in the USA. I say was because this is a finished action. He's not doing it now. Okay, he was the first president. And because this action is current today, we say that he is on the $1 note. Okay, the $1 American dollar. And we know we also had, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but Ichio Higuchi. Okay, she was from Japan and she was a writer. Okay, really important, past tense with the verb to be. And we know that she is on the 5,000 yen note. Okay, so really important, use the verb to be when you say where someone was from, what they did, especially people that are no longer living, or maybe they no longer do that action. So, maybe I could say I was in Argentina in 2012. I was in Argentina. I'm not there now, but I was in Argentina in 2012. Okay, and I was a student at that time. Okay, so for countries and for our jobs, we use the verb to be. And remember, it's I was, you were, she, he, it was, we were, they were. So we've got this paragraph about Marco Polo. So let's have a look at it together. We need to use some of our action verbs in the past. So Marco, that's our subject. So Marco Polo. Now I need the verb grow up, but in the past it's grew up. Remember, that's where someone was raised. Where did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Okay, I grew up in Australia. That means I spent my childhood. I was a child in Australia. That's what it just means. I lived in Australia when I was a child. That's what it means. So Marco Polo, you should have grew up in Venice in the 13th. Okay, remember we know how to say these times, the 13th century. Okay, so he grew up in Venice, which is in Italy, in the 13th century. Remember, we know which time this is. The 13th century is from the year 1300 to 1399. So sorry, the 13th century is from the year 1201 to 1299. So 1201, or you could just say the 1200 to 1299. So this is the 13th century. So that means that he was born in this time. Okay, he grew up, he was born in the 13th century. So we use when as a time expression. Remember we talked about time expressions, and time expressions just tell us when something happened, the time. So we're saying that we need to use the verb to be. So when he was 17, okay, when he was 17 years old, he traveled. Now travel is in the present, but in the past, I put a double L and an ED. Okay, he traveled with his father and uncle. Okay, I stop the sentence, I start a new sentence because every sentence has one information in it. Okay, now go, what's go in the past? Went. Yeah, so they went from Venice. They went from Venice to Persia. Okay, that country, Persia, now is made up of many countries. Persia was just like an area called Persia. And finally, to China. Remember, we need to capitalize countries. Okay, so really important, we have traveled, we have grew up as our past simple verb. The first one is an irregular, and it's a two-word verb. This one, traveled, is a regular verb, it takes the ED. And we have went. Went is an irregular past verb. And was is just from the verb to be. Okay, polo. So when we need to talk about someone, we don't want to repeat their first name, we repeat their surname. So polo, live. Now live is now. For example, I live in Australia. But Polo, because he's not alive anymore, he lived. Okay, regular verb. He lived in China for 17 years. And he worked. So what do we need to do with this verb to make it in the past? And he worked for the Khan or emperor of the country. 24 years later. That's our time expression. It tells us when. Remember, we use time expressions at the beginning of a sentence to say when is the action. So when he was 24 years old, or 24 years later, he returned. Okay, so the verb is return, but we need to put ed. He returned to Venice. And now we have the verb write, which is the present, but in the past, it's irregular. He wrote a book about his journeys in Asia. The book becomes the past. The book became, that's in the past. Okay, it became famous across Europe because of the stories. Okay, because of the stories. Marco Polo. Now we've got the verb die, but in the past died, because if it ends in an E, like live, all you do is just add that D. So Marco Polo died in 1324. Okay, so what other past verbs did we have here? Past simple verbs: lived, worked, returned, wrote, became, died. Okay, so we can see some of those verbs are regular and some of them are irregular. Remember, regular means they take the ed. Irregular means they break the rule. They have their own rule. So let's make some questions. Marco Polo, what in the 13th century? Or just before we look at those, let's recap the rules. So remember, we are talking about past simple actions, okay? Actions or activities that happened in the past. So regular verbs, you just add the ed to the ending, or maybe it's a d or an ied. Remember, that was for words like study. When it ends in a y, you take off the y and you put an ied. For example, last weekend, I studied all the time. I studied throughout my weekend. Now, you could have irregular verbs, but they have their own rules, okay? They're words like went, spoke, wrote, drove. You know, there's lots of them, okay? So you just have to look up a list of irregular verbs. I will give you a list, and it's just lots of verbs. You just got to learn them. Irregular because they break the rule. They have their own rules. So there's no rule. I can't put a rule here. Okay, and negative, to make a negative sentence, so we start with the subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then you say didn't. So you've got the verb do, did, and then not. But we put them together, we contract them together. Didn't, and then the verb, but there's no ed. So, for example, I didn't study on the weekend. I didn't go to the beach. I didn't visit my grandmother this week. I didn't visit her. Okay, so when we want to ask and answer questions now, really important. You want to ask someone, what did they do on the weekend? Where did they go? Who did they see? So you start with one of the 6 W's. Who, what, where, why, when, and then you put did, then you put the subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then the verb, there's no ed. For example, where did you go on the weekend? Who did you see at the party? Why did you buy that car? Where did you eat for dinner? When did you see Maria? Okay, it's questions like that. So not about now, but about the past, sometime in the past. You can also say how many, but this is with a noun. Okay, so we use the W's with the verb, but the noun, and then did, subject, verb. For example, like how many books did you buy? How many siblings, that means brothers and sisters, did you have when you were young? Or how many cars does your family have? So if we're talking about Marco Polo, who we read before, we could say a question like, where did Marco Polo live in the 13th century? Okay, that's a past simple question. We know where, in Venice. When did he travel with his father and uncle? We know it was when he was 17 years old. Which parts of the world did they go to? Can you see that these are past simple questions with a W, the first rule? Which parts of the world, that's a noun, did, subject, they, verb, go to. Now we've got a how question. How many years did he live in China? Who did he work for? When did he return to Venice? What did he write a book about? So now we know how to use the past simple. We know how to use the past simple, and we know how to ask and answer questions in the past. It's called the past simple because it's the first simple way to make a sentence, to say something about what happened, what did you do, who did you see, where did you go, what action happened, not now, but in the past. And the past could be yesterday, last night, last week, last year, when you were a kid, last month, 10 years ago. That's all in the past, not now, in this moment now. Okay, we've got some more time expressions. So remember, we've been saying that time expressions, we put them at the beginning of a sentence, before the subject, and before the past simple verb. So time expression just means when. It's the time, when. When did the action happen? So, for example, last evening, I watched a movie. Last month, I visited my grandparents. Okay, we're on number 6. Number 7. Last week, I cooked pasta. You can also say the month and the date. On February the 28th, I met my best friend. In March, I went to Melbourne. Last March, my brother arrived in Adelaide. On Wednesday and Friday, I worked. Last week, my friend went to the cinema. Last week, I called my father. Yesterday, I went to the beach. Last weekend, my mother told me that she loved me. Last evening, I ate a pizza. Last March, I was on holidays in Cusco, Peru. Last night, I watched soccer on TV. Last week, I started a new job. Okay, so I hope that you're able to make a sentence in the past simple using a time expression, and try to put it at the beginning of a sentence, the time, because it just makes it easy to think about what you're trying to say. So when did it happen? And then say what happened. So we also talked about, if you remember, opinion adjectives. Opinion adjectives gives us the feeling. How did we feel about what happened? So if I told you I went to dinner last night with my parents, I could say it was a beautiful night. The food was delicious. It was a little bit chilly. That means cold. But, you know, it was amazing. I had a good time. I had a good time. The meal was perfect. Okay, so it tells me lots about how did I feel about the action, because I told you I went to dinner, but then I gave you lots and lots of feelings about it. We've got words like gorgeous, if something was pretty, you know, beautiful, wonderful. If you saw a show, you could say it was spectacular. The show was really, really amazing. It was spectacular. Incredible. It was awesome. How was the movie? It was great. It was awesome. If something is bad, it was horrible, terrific, really good, lovely. The evening was really lovely. It was excellent. It was perfect. The night was cool. Not so good, not bad. And remember, to make a sentence, we say it was, and then you add the opinion adjective. So either you could say it was, Okay, so this is how we make the sentence. You could say it was only if you mentioned it before. Like if you were saying, I went to the movies, okay? And after, I don't want to repeat the word the movie. So I say, it was good. The movie was good. It was good. The night was really nice. It was nice. It was busy. There was a lot of people. Okay, so really important. Don't forget to say it was and then the feeling. It was great. It was beautiful. So let's make some questions. When we ask someone, how was their evening? Okay, how was their night? It's the same question. How was your night? How was your evening? For number 9, did you have a good weekend? That's using the verb do. In the past, did. Subject, you. Verb, have. This is the main verb. So this one is an auxiliary verb, the helper verb, and this is the main verb. Did you have a good weekend? Did you enjoy the movie? Did you like your meal? Did you find a car park? Did you make a cake? Did you make dinner? You can also make a question using the verb was, to be. So was in the past. Was it a special party? Was it a great night? So again, we're using the adjective here with the noun. So this is with using the noun. Was it a special party? Was it a special night? Was it a beautiful night? Was it a warm day? So where is a question about location, a place. So where did you go last night? Where did you find your bag? Maybe you were missing something. Where did you find it? Where did you buy that dress? Where did you buy the tickets? And who is a question about people. So who were you with? Who did you see at the party? Who were there at the party? We can also use it with a plural. Were there lots of people there at the party maybe, or at the class or whatever? So remember, if we ask questions that start with was or were or did, okay, if you have a question, you hear someone say, was it a good night? Were there a lot of people? Did you have fun? You have to say yes or no first. And it depends on the verb. Was it good? Yes, it was. Were there many people? Yes, there were. Did you have a good time? Yes, I did. And in the negative, the same thing. Was it a good day? No, it wasn't. Were there many people? No, there weren't. Did you have a good time? No, I didn't. But for how questions, try to use the opinion adjectives. So how was the day? Because that means like, was it good or bad? How was your class? How was your test? You say it was good. It was a good test. No, it was really bad. I didn't understand. It was a hard test. So for how questions, use opinion adjectives. Okay, so that's for how questions. But if you have was, were, or did, you say yes or no first. So number 10, we've got, so if I said, where did you go last night? Number 8, to the cinema. So 10A is number 4. Where did you go last night? To the cinema. If I said, was it a good party? You could respond, yes, my friend finished university, so lots of people were there. If I say, who were you with? Number 10C. You can say my brother and his family, because who? If I said, did you have a good weekend? You can say, it was okay. I slept a lot and we went for a walk yesterday. If I say, were there lots of people there? You can say, no, not many. And if I say, how was your evening? You could say something like, it was fun. I went out for a meal with friends. So now we know how to ask what people did, maybe on their weekend, what they did last trip, their last holiday. And yeah, lots of things that we can ask them. So let's practice by writing a conversation, asking about how someone's weekend or how their day was. We won't have time to write one, but we can have a look at this one. So this one's a short one. We've got two people. So A says, hi, Luna, how was your day? B says, it was great, Dad. What did you get up to? And the little girl says, I painted a picture and I read a book. Okay, look at her past simple verbs. The first one is irregular. It takes the ED. And the last one is irregular. And I read a book. Wow. And did you see your best friend? Did you see your best friend? No, she didn't come to school today. Okay, so that's what we had. Let's recap what we had because this is unit 6. So what did we do? The past simple. The past simple, speaking about actions, things that happen in the past. You have to know the regular. What do you need to add to the verb? And which ones are the irregular verbs? How do you make a negative sentence? How can I ask someone a question about the past? What are time expressions that I can use, like yesterday, last night, last evening, 10 years ago? How can I give my feeling about what happened? How can I tell you how I feel about the activity or the action? Okay, now we know how to have a conversation. So that's using the past simple. The most simple way to speak about the past is to use the past simple. Really simple. Just remember your regular ending, remember your irregular ending, know how to ask a question, and then you can have a conversation about anything. Where someone was born, where did they grow up, what did they do on their trip, how did they do on their test, how was their meal? You can ask them about anything. Okay, so that's all we had. And when we do continue next time, we're going to be speaking about journeys. So using a lot of adjectives to talk about our journeys when we go from one place to another. We're going to compare. We want to talk about one place, but I want to say something like compare it to another place. So was it better? Was it bigger? Was it more beautiful? Was it colder? And then we're going to look at travel money. Okay, how do we talk about money when we need to travel? Okay, so it's going to be all about journeys, going to places and being able to tell people what happened when we went to a place. Okay, so that's all next lesson.